Hey, what's going on, guys? We're in Turkey here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about site placements. This is a video I've wanted to do for a while. It's often cited as being a learning curve for newer players, is understanding proper site placements, which sites to play, where to put them. There's no way that I can cover like every situation in this one video, but I'm hoping that I can provide, especially for newer players, a foundational sense of knowledge that will help you adapt in game and find your strategies going forward. To start, we're going to take a look at the rule book and like what the actual rules for playing sites are. Importantly, they come into play through your avatar's ability tap, play, or draw a site. There are other ways that they can enter play. They don't come up a whole lot, and we're going to kind of ignore that. We're also going to be assuming that you're not playing Pathfinder because he doesn't exactly have this ability, and his site placements are all over the place. And sites must be placed on a void or rubble adjacent to one of your other sites. On turn 1, it has to be underneath your avatar. And if it's not turn 1 and you control no sites, it has to be placed to the nearest possible rubble or void adjacent, not adjacent, but closest to your avatar. So this is our realm, our nice 5x4 grid, and we're going to set the avatars up, and we're going to play our first sites. When I was learning the game, my friends and I, we would play sites down something like this, and it kind of worked for a bit. We were really afraid of being landlocked, which one of the things I want to tell you in this video is don't be afraid of being landlocked. This site layout is actually tremendously bad. Avoid it at all costs. And what I would call a standard layout, knowing what I know now, is something like this. A 2x3 grid with your avatar in the center. So why the 2x3 and not the like one back with the 5 spaced out? So the 5 in the front was there because we were afraid of being landlocked, because you can do that in Sorcery. If you deny your opponent void or rubble adjacent to their sites, they can't play sites for the rest of the game unless everything gets blown up. So that was something that like we were afraid of, and we didn't want to let our opponents like do that. And if we noticed that someone was slacking on their site drops, we were gonna do that to them. But an important thing to understand is that being landlocked is really not that big of a deal. Most decks do not play past like 6 or 7 mana. And if you spend your time trying to landlock a deck that only needs 6 mana, you're just drawing way more sites than you'll ever need. And you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. And the reason why this layout works so well is I'm going to give you some examples here. Archimago is attacking with red cap powers, and he hits my beacon. Druid's going to take 3, but because he only had the 3 sites in my front row available to him, I'm in range to get him with an Arc Lightning or a Poison Nova. Or if I had an Airborne Blocker can defend all of these sites. There's no site. If I have the Dapple Vampire either on myself or the Watchtower in front of me, I am completely covered from any attack anywhere. In this example, back to the 5 in the front row, I got Dapple Vampire on the bottomless pit. And it's pretty good because she can cover 4 sites here. But Archimago just like attacks my ruins on the other side of the realm. I can counter, like I could, see that coming, and I can play my vampire on this crossroads. She's still defending 4 sites, but then Archimago just plays the red cap powers on the other side of the realm, and I'm still taking the damage. So this is kind of like a big thing, is your sites, while they provide you mana, they also make you more vulnerable. And one of the things about this layout is you are very spread out, and there's no way for you to entirely cover your defenses against enemy minions. And in particular against enemy minions. Avatars are kind of always locking eyes with each other, and you're in range of projectiles and whatnot. But it's much easier to defend the 2x3 because it's centered on your avatar, so proximity spells are gonna hit everything. You don't need an airborne minion. Like, even if you just had a regular ground minion on that beacon in front of you, they're covering your like left and right. So keeping yourself like centered is very powerful. And also, if you need to go past 6 mana, and a lot of decks will, now you have like an option, because you can choose to either play into your corners, which are very safe. Generally, corners do not see a lot of action. Or now you can start to secure your half of the realm by playing above the corners. But that's going to be very late game. By the time, we're talking 7-8 mana at this point. So it shouldn't be too big of a deal that you're opening yourself up a whole lot. But what you really want to do is make sure that while you're advancing your mana and getting your sights down, you're able to protect them. Because I've seen a lot of games get lost because somebody played a sight where they had no business playing a sight. So keeping your sights secure, defensible, is very important. We're going to talk about different types of sights. There has not been a whole lot of discussion around this, so I'm kind of just making up terms right now, but you can let me know if you like agree with these categories, or like if you think there should be more and whatnot. I definitely think there could be a fifth. But we've got defensive or fortress sites, resource sites, utility sites, and value sites. I'm going to get into all of these to give you a better idea of what your sites are doing for you and like how you should play them based on that. So starting off with defensive sites, they are generally difficult or hazardous for minions to enter. And because of this, they're best placed on your front row. Your front row is going to be the first point of interaction for your opponent's minions. Before they can get to your back row sites, they're gonna have to step over your front row sites. So if you make them these difficult to enter sites, some examples here: Perilous Bridge, Bottomless Pit, Free City, and Gnome Hollows. These are some of the best in class defensive sites. You're gonna like really make it difficult for your opponent to hit you. Perilous Bridge makes it so they can't just cross over the top. Bottomless Pit is gonna kill all of the ground minions who enter. Free City attacks and defends for you, and Gnome Hollows can't be entered by units with 3 or more power. So all of these kind of just hamstring an opponent's advance, or just make it so that like you can't be attacked. They have to get around it, and there are ways to get around it, but you have to make them have it. And that's why these sites are very powerful. They don't do a whole lot on your back row because your opponent just doesn't need to enter them to deal the damage. But if they're on your front row, they got like your opponent has to get through them. Resource sites. They excel at everything you need from a site, providing mana and threshold. These are best played on your back row because they generally do not contribute to your board at all. They're great. Every deck is going to run resource sites because they do everything a site needs to do, but they don't impact the board. For some examples, you've got Color Out of Space, you've got your dual sites, you've got your tri sites, and I even have towers up here because they do provide mana at a much higher rate than every other site in the game. Like these have no like in-game ability. They have no static or like passive ability. In fact, the Tri and Color, they have like bad abilities technically. You just kind of want these on your back row. They're not doing anything for you, but they're like, they're making you be able to cast your spells. So like they're very important. These are going to be like the cornerstone of every deck. The more colors you're running, the more of these you're going to want in your Atlas. But don't, like, if you can help it, don't play them where you're going to be playing minions or where your opponent is going to be able to attack, because they're not helping you out there. Utility sites. So utility sites, and this is definitely the most vague of the categories, they provide spell-like effects in the Atlas, and they offer a wide range of uses. These are best played wherever they will get the most use, and sometimes timing is key. What I mean by that is some of these have Genesis abilities, and you'll want to play them when the Genesis ability actually matters. Others will be static abilities, and you won't really need to wait to use them. So some examples here are Watchtower and Pebbled Paths. These are great utility sites with static abilities. You can just play them whenever. A lot of the times, not every deck is going to be playing defensive sites. And so if you're not doing that, your utility sites are going to be the best bet to play in the front line because they at least impact the board somehow. Watchtower removes stealth from enemies nearby. Pebbled Paths is actually great in the front line, and minions nearby lose charge. So as long as you're not playing charge minions, this is strictly an upside for you. And charge minions are very strong right now. So Pebbled Paths is like definitely, if you're an Earth and you're not playing charge, you should be playing Pebbled Paths. And then some Genesis abilities, Babbling Brook and Arid Desert. These are Genesis, so you want to wait to use them until it matters. But that's also a question that you have to answer for yourself is like, how important is this mana and threshold right now? Because it's great being able to get value out of these abilities, but you don't want to like hamstring your turn just to disable a minion or just to deal 1 damage. You know, if your deck is able to make use of deserts, that 1 damage can matter a lot. And if you're playing maybe a slower deck and there's a lot of dudes coming at you, like getting that Genesis, the disable effect on Babbling Brook is great, but you don't want to hurt your turns and your future turns. Like don't tunnel too hard on these. This is something like you have to assess for yourself. When do I need this ability? When do I need the mana? When do I need the threshold? So that is something that like will come with time and just knowing your deck. Value sites. So value sites affect a player's hand or decks, providing value via card selection or draw. These are best played in the back row because just like the resource sites, they are not going to impact the board at all. These are doing stuff strictly with your hand or your decks. And some examples are Primordial Spring, Observatory, Crossroads, and Autumn River, or any of the rivers really. All of these are great sites. They offer you card selection. The Spring gives you card draw if you can make it work. Wizard's Den is another really popular example of this. These are really powerful sites. They're great to include, but they just don't affect the board. So again, keep them away from the action. I think you should really just be looking at a site's ability and asking, does this affect the board? And that should tell you whether it's a front row or a back row site. Some sites might not fit any of these descriptions, and this is kind of what I was talking about earlier with like maybe there's more categories in this. Some of these sites are like really bad, like Planar Gate and Cornerstone. I don't know what these sites are doing. You can maybe, a lot of these you could just call them utility sites because again, it's a very vague description. But also some of these are like really strong sites like Rift Valley and Cloud City. And I almost made that a category, calling them like terraformers. And like these are sites that can change the geography of the realm. Rift Valley in particular, if you're playing a fortress deck, that site can crack your front row wide open, and Cloud City can get really tricky and start cornering your opponent once you start moving it around and playing sites off it. Also just keeping minions safe. Another example of a terraformer would maybe be like Mirage, and depending on how you want to look at it, Sinkhole and Roots. But they would also, a lot like these would all just fit under the utility site category. So it's totally up to your interpretation. But yeah, some sites might not fit into these. Some of them are really bad. Some of them are really good. So some general tips and tricks. The first one is don't let your opponent play a site adjacent to your avatar. And there's a disclaimer here because you can do that as long as you have a way to move your avatar. You really don't ever want to be adjacent to an opponent's site. The reason is because, especially if they're in fire, there's a lot of ways for them to just hit you with things that would, like, if you're adjacent to their sites. Kobolds, Violymps, Infernal Legions, Colicky Dragonets. We're going to take a look at an example here of, like, how you can, like, sort of prevent this from happening. So, like, it's turn 1, or we just had our turn 1, and oftentimes, like, it's very good to just play a site in front of you because that way your opponent isn't going to be able to get onto your front row this easily. But if you're on the play, you can actually afford to like take a turn back and play to the side. I would not do this if you're going second, because if your opponent played forward, now you are inviting them right adjacent to your avatar. But again, if you have mobility, if you're playing Pathfinder or Avatar of Air, or if you just like have blinks or riptides, something to move yourself, it's not the end of the world. Druid went first, so he plays a Ruins to the side because he wants to play a little slower. Then Archimago plays an Island Leviathan in front of himself, and now it's Druid's time to act again. And what should he do? I would recommend, especially like, know your deck and know like what you're doing, but as just like a blanket strategy, I would just play a site in the front. I don't care if it's a site that I would say is in the back, should be in the back row. You should just get a site in the front, because that way your opponent isn't getting adjacent to you in any way. It doesn't just have to be like in fire. Like if they have charge minions in air, or they could like drop a spellcaster and like do some crazy stuff. It's really scary when your opponent starts like playing right in front of you like this. And I think it's just very important to like give yourself that space by having a site in between you and theirs. But find this out for yourself. Like, don't listen to me all the time. Have an understanding of your deck's mana curve to determine how many sites you need. This kind of goes back to the landlocking thing I was talking about. And maybe this was just me and my play group, but we really tunneled hard on like landlocking and like, we drew so many sites early and like would play so many sites so quickly. But you really like getting landlocked really doesn't matter if you don't have like a 6-drop in your deck. If you only need 5 mana to play everything in your deck, who cares if your opponent traps you with 6 mana? Maybe it feels a little bad, but like it's not the end of the world. In my Flamecaller deck, I say like I want 4 mana by turn 4, and then I want to slowly get to 6 mana. And you should have some kind of sense of how your deck is playing, similar to that. You want to hit this mana amount quickly, and then like get to this mana like at some point. Or maybe you just want to get to 6 mana really fast, or something like that. Kind of bouncing off what I just said, decks with low to medium mana curves don't need to be worried about getting landlocked. So don't sweat it if your opponent starts playing forward and like into you. Use this as the more sites they play out and the more aggressively they play them, the more vulnerable they're going to be getting attacked. So honestly, let them. Like, if they start surrounding you, you have so many ways to attack their sites now. And if you only need 5 mana or you only need 6 mana, you're chilling. Drawing 1 or 2 early sites lets you better shape your domain. So especially when you're doing like the fortressy strategy where you are playing a lot of the defensive sites, again, like you kind of do want to play on your front row by like turn 2, turn 3 at the latest if you're going first. You kind of really want to have a defensive site if that's your strategy. So drawing 1 or 2 sites, seeing more sites lets you shape your domain better, and getting like the right sites in the right locations. This is something I employ often. Even if you're not doing that and you're just utility sites, I really like to get that ping. I really like to make that ping matter when I'm playing deserts, and I will try to not play a desert at the wrong time. Sometimes I tunnel too hard on this, and I should just like play that desert, like cut my losses. But like this is like really important. Like playing the right sites at the right time really matters, and drawing those sites earlier will just help you find those right sites when you need them. This is the video. It's not a whole lot, but I hope it sheds some light on how to play your sites better. And like maybe it did. Maybe you knew all of this. You're a veteran player and you think I'm wrong. Let me know. Like, let's start a discussion, because I'm trying to just kind of start some vocabulary, like with the site categories, and get people talking more about like sites and like the design of sites. So let me know what you guys think. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, or at least I hope I gave you some food for thought. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I hope you guys have a great day.